I am 27 years old, technically the oldest kid in what I usually describe as my patchwork family quilt, except with none of the fuzzy warmth that phrase suggests. It is more like a quilt someone made out of leftover fabric, did not measure anything, and then stapled together instead of sewing. When I was 20, my dad, Rick, remarried a woman named Cheryl, who was 35 at the time and had two kids from a previous marriage: Mason, who is now 8, and Chloe, who recently turned 5. I have tried my best to be decent about the whole blended family thing. I helped where I could. I moved furniture when they bought the new house. I loaned money when things were tight. I fixed faucets and replaced garbage disposal blades and did all the little tasks that people assume the oldest son can do. I even babysat from time to time. And I genuinely liked the kids because they were chaotic in ways that were funny rather than hostile. But at some point, in the universe my stepmother lives in, this very normal occasional helping transformed into the idea that I was free, on-demand labor. No notice required, no compensation expected, no consideration needed. It felt as though my willingness to be helpful was written on a giant billboard that only she could see. The whole problem exploded when Cheryl called me one afternoon with what she clearly believed was a normal, everyday request. I was sitting in my apartment after work, drinking cold coffee because I had forgotten to finish it earlier when my phone started buzzing. I answered without thinking, expecting something like a question about whether I could come over to look at a leaking pipe. Instead, she told me in a very upbeat tone that she and my dad were planning to spend a month in Arizona for some kind of marriage retreat. She described it like it was the kind of thing you casually plan between buying groceries and getting the oil changed. I assumed she meant a weekend. I assumed she meant a short trip. Then she said the words, "a whole month," and my brain paused as if it needed to restart. She continued talking, explaining that the retreat would help them reconnect spiritually, emotionally, and whatever other words she piled on. And then she added that they needed someone they trusted to watch the kids for all 30 days. Before I could even collect my thoughts, she said that they wanted me to move into their house to take care of Mason and Chloe full time. I laughed because my brain did not accept this as a serious request. I thought she had slipped a joke into the conversation. I thought she might say something afterward like, "I wish we could do that, but we found a sitter already." But she did not laugh with me. She said with this stone-cold seriousness, "We are a family, and you are the older brother. You should help us." And she said it in a tone that implied she believed the matter was settled and that I was going to start packing immediately. There are a lot of things I can tolerate, but being voluntold into a month of unpaid full-time childcare is not one of them. I like the kids. I really do. Mason is an 8-year-old who operates like a human tornado that has learned how to talk, negotiate, and climb on top of furniture specifically labeled "Do Not Climb." He once tried to race the vacuum cleaner and nearly broke his ankle. Chloe, who is 5, once filled her mother's purse with yogurt because she believed the purse looked hungry. They are exhausting but entertaining, and I enjoy spending time with them in small, manageable doses. But I am not their father. I am not their legal guardian. I am not living in that house anymore, and I do not have the schedule, energy, or financial situation that allows me to drop everything and become a live-in nanny for free. I have a job. I have rent, I have bills, I have a life. And in our part of Ohio, childcare is expensive because it requires energy that only paid professionals usually have. I told her calmly that if she wanted someone to live in her house for a month, watch 2 energetic children day and night, handle meals, laundry, transportation, school drop-offs, school pickups, homework, house management, bedtime routines, morning chaos, sibling fights, and the general emotional storms of 2 children who still think yogurt belongs in a handbag, then that was not helping anymore. That was a job. I did not raise my voice. I did not insult her. I simply said that I would have to charge for that level of responsibility. I did the math seriously, the same way professional childcare providers calculate rates. 8 hours a day, two kids, overnights, meal prep, cleaning, driving them around, and unpredictable emergencies. I kept the price low because they are family, and I told her the number $3,100 for the entire month, which was still far less than anyone else would have charged for the same level of work. The second the number left my mouth, she reacted as if I had announced a fee so offensive that it violated international law. She said in this wounded voice that we are family and we do not charge each other money for helping. Then she escalated it dramatically, claiming that she could not believe I would put a price on spending time with my siblings. She followed it up with a comment about how I should be ashamed, as if I had committed some massive betrayal. I told her that I love the kids and would gladly spend a day or two with them, but a full month without compensation was not helping. It was taking advantage of me, my time, my money, and my life. I said that I was not doing it. Before I could say anything else, she hung up on me. The call ended so abruptly that for a second I thought the connection had dropped. But no, she had actually hung up because she did not get the answer she wanted. About an hour later, my dad sent me a single thumbs up emoji. The thumbs up was not random. The thumbs up was the entire emotional vocabulary of my father condensed into one gesture. In dad language, it translates directly to, I agree with you but do not want to deal with the fallout. The next morning, I woke up to a group text titled Family Team, which was already a sign that I should have thrown my phone into the nearest body of water. Any message thread with a name like that is never about actual teamwork. It is always about assigning responsibility to the one person who is not causing the chaos. I opened the chat with the same dread a person feels when opening a work email marked urgent from someone who has never once had an actual emergency. Right at the top was a paragraph from Cheryl. I am not exaggerating when I say it had no punctuation. It was a single emotional outburst typed like her phone keyboard was missing every button except the letter keys. She wrote that she does everything for everyone and cannot believe I would abandon Mason and Chloe like their real father did. My eyes stopped moving halfway through, not because the sentence ended, but because my brain stalled out at the comparison she decided to make. I sat there thinking that it was unbelievable she would pull out that level of emotional manipulation at 7:40 in the morning. I responded that childcare is a job, not a moral obligation written into my DNA. She immediately fired back that I am basically their big brother, and I should want to spend time with them. I stared at my phone and then tried to explain in simple, logical terms. I told her that I would have to take time off work, lose income, keep paying rent on my apartment while also staying at their house, cover my own meals, handle school drop-offs and pickups, entertain two children for 4 full weekends, manage the household, and be solely responsible for every crisis that might happen, because crisis is the natural state of children. She wrote that it is not that hard. I sat there in complete disbelief because this was the same woman who once called me sobbing because Mason had flushed a Hot Wheels car down the toilet and she claimed she was emotionally overwhelmed. I was supposed to believe that caring for them for an uninterrupted month was somehow going to be easy. Then the extended family began jumping in, joining the thread like vultures circling roadkill. My aunt decided this was her moment to deliver a lecture about family loyalty, saying that I should just do it because family matters. My cousin sent a gif of someone dramatically saying, "You are dead to me," and acted like this made her hilarious instead of insufferable. Apparently, the group chat was turning into some kind of family moral tribunal, and I was the defendant on trial for not sacrificing my life for 30 days. Amid all this chaos, my younger brother Ethan, who lives 800 miles away and whose contribution to family events mostly consists of liking photos on social media, finally chimed in. He wrote, "LOL, good luck, bro. That sounds like hell. No way." That was the extent of his comment. He wanted no part of it and was proud to declare it. At least someone in the family was being honest, even if he contributed absolutely nothing useful. By midday, my patience had evaporated, and all that was left was a faint buzzing in my skull from all the contradictory opinions being thrown at me. That was when my dad called. He did not text, did not write in the group chat, did not send an emoji. He called, which meant he knew the situation had taken a turn toward the dramatic. His voice sounded tired in that way he gets when he is trying to stretch himself into the shape of a mediator, even though he hates mediating anything. He told me that he wanted to clarify something. The trip he and Cheryl were planning? It was not actually a marriage retreat. There were no scheduled counseling sessions, no structured activities for couples therapy, no spiritual renewal. What they were really planning was a second honeymoon. He admitted they had booked spa packages and wine tours, and a scenic desert railway excursion, and a luxury resort suite with a private hot tub. He said quietly that my stepmother was very stressed, and he was trying to keep the peace. I felt a pressure in my chest the entire time he spoke. The feeling of someone pushing responsibility toward me with both hands, while pretending it was a gentle suggestion. I told him that I loved him, but peace was not when one person did everything and the other person paid the bill. He sighed like a man who finally heard the truth but wished he had not. A week later, after the group chat chaos had finally burned itself out like a campfire someone forgot to put out properly, I stopped by their place to drop off a toolbox. I had borrowed it from Dad months ago and decided I might as well return it before someone accused me of holding the family hardware hostage. I parked in the driveway, walked up to the door, and before I could even knock, the door swung open with the force of a tiny hurricane. Mason stood there with the proud posture of a knight guarding a castle and immediately yelled, "Are you coming to live with us?" His voice was so hopeful that it hit me in the gut. I told him no, and he looked like someone had just canceled Christmas, his birthday, and recess all at once. Then he added the line that made my stomach drop. "Mommy said you do not like us enough." That was when I knew the situation had hit a new, low, subterranean level. It was one thing for Cheryl to guilt me, but using the kids as emotional megaphones crossed a line deep enough to reach the Earth's mantle. Before I could respond, Chloe toddled over with her usual energy, wrapped her arms around my leg, and said, "Mommy said you are too busy for us," in the kind of voice meant to tug directly at the heart of whoever hears it. These children were being used like emotional sticky notes plastered with guilt. I knelt down to their eye level and told them that I loved them, and that it was not about not liking them. I said I just could not stay for a whole month, because adults have jobs and responsibilities and lives they cannot put on pause. Mason listened with the serious expression of a kid who is trying to understand complex adult problems, then immediately followed it with one of the greatest questions I have ever heard. How much candy would it take? I had to admire the negotiation skills of a child who approached life like everything had a price and he was willing to haggle. Inside the house, the air felt heavy with the kind of tension that comes from someone planning something without asking anyone if it was actually happening. Then I saw it. Cheryl had completely transformed the guest room. It was spotless, organized, and laid out like a boarding school dorm room, designed for someone who had no choice in attending. Freshly folded towels sat in a neat stack on the bed. A weekly schedule had been printed and taped to the wall, color-coded and laminated. There was a list of activities labeled Daily Structure. There was even a weekly meal plan that implied I would be cooking everything from scratch. She had essentially created an entire universe where I had already moved in, all through the power of pure assumption. It was so detailed that it felt like walking into a parallel dimension, where she had manifested me into a full-time nanny through sheer willpower. Cheryl walked into the room like she owned the air itself and announced that it was good. I was here because they needed someone to pick up the kids next Friday, since she and Dad had a dinner reservation. She said it the way some people say pass the salt, as if it was casual and automatic and obviously my responsibility. I told her again, as calmly as I could manage, that I was not agreeing to anything without pay, and the moment the words left my mouth, her expression crumpled into theatrical disappointment. She said I was so selfish it was unbelievable, as if I had personally insulted every ancestor she had ever had. Then she delivered the masterpiece she had been building toward, the emotional grand finale. She said that if I refuse to help them now, then I should not expect them to help me when I have kids. I stood there thinking that she genuinely believed she was delivering some sort of curse, like a wizard promising eternal doom. I answered that if I have kids someday, I am not planning to dump them on someone else for an entire month while I go drink wine in Arizona. She sputtered, flapped her hands a little, and muttered something about young people today in the tone of someone who believed she had said something profound. I turned around and walked out before the laughter that was building inside me escaped. I left before I laughed in her face. 2 days ago, I was driving home from work, stuck behind a minivan that insisted on going 10 miles under the speed limit with its blinker on for no reason, when my phone buzzed in the cup holder. When I saw Dad's name, I already knew he was not calling to talk about anything simple like lawn care or if I still had his ladder. There was a heaviness in the air even before I picked up. The moment he spoke, I could hear it in his voice. He sounded defeated in a way I had not heard since the year he tried to assemble a trampoline without reading the instructions, and ended up with something that looked like a modern art sculpture. He told me the big news. The Arizona trip was canceled, not postponed, not adjusted, canceled. And the reason was exactly what anyone outside of Cheryl's personal fantasy bubble could have predicted. Without me, they could not find childcare that met their criteria. Their criteria, by the way, being a list so unrealistic it should have come with circus music playing in the background. They needed someone who was free for a full 30 days, overnight, willing to handle housework, meal prep, emergencies, and school transportation, and be flexible with no notice and somehow not cost money. Any rational adult would look at that list and say, this is a job description for a live-in professional nanny with hazard pay. But in Cheryl's mind, it was something a family member should do simply out of love and loyalty. Dad told me that Cheryl had called 3 different babysitting and nanny services and had been absolutely stunned that they all wanted real, actual money. He said one service quoted her $5,200 for the month. She apparently told them that this was robbery. They responded that this was childcare. If I had been a fly on the wall in that room, I would have passed out from laughter. He said that after hearing the numbers, Cheryl had cried for 2 hours straight and declared that I had ruined her dream honeymoon, as though I had personally marched into Arizona, set fire to every spa and winery, and declared the state closed. Then, in the kind of move only she could pull off, she asked Dad if he thought I would at least stay with the kids for a weekend while they recovered emotionally. Dad asked me, and I answered with the calmness of a man who has fully accepted his role as the villain in someone else's story. I said, sure, my weekend fee is $480. There was silence so dense I could feel the air change through the phone. Then Cheryl hung up so fast, you would think I had announced I was raising the price by the second. About an hour later, Ethan texted me with the kind of brotherly admiration that he usually saves for videos of people doing stupid but impressive stunts. He wrote, "Bro, did you seriously try to invoice them again? I am proud of you." This morning, I got what I assume was Cheryl's final dramatic flourish. She sent a message declaring that since I had made my position clear, they would not be asking me for help ever again. I stared at the sentence for a full minute, thinking about the peace that would settle over my life like a soft blanket. I replied with a simple thank you, and I meant it on a spiritual level. Dad texted me privately a little while later. He said he knew the whole situation was unreasonable and he was sorry. I told him I loved him because I do. He is stuck in the middle of a tornado wearing flip-flops, trying to pretend he is holding an umbrella when all he really has is a soup spoon. I know he never wanted any of this tension. I know he is trying to keep 2 worlds together with duct tape and deep breaths. In the end, the universe worked out exactly as it should have. They learned that childcare is not free. I learned that setting boundaries is not just allowed, it is necessary. The kids will be fine because they know I care about them. And I will be fine, because I finally said no to something that was never mine to carry. Thank you for listening to the story.